don't think so.
Take a seat. We would be honored if you would join us.
We're honored that you would join us. Welcome back to the after party, everyone. Including you, bro.
Including me.
I'm glad you're back. Hey, hold on. I haven't introed you yet. We're getting Cameron's final thoughts on the Acolyte. I'm going to throw some stuff in. I held some stuff back. It's going to be a good time. We got plenty of news to discuss. Some of which we might have to table. Maybe we'll just get to the real important stuff this week. It's a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any time. Hello, Tyler Botkins. I like to blow things up because I like to blow things up. And with me, the circle is now complete. When he left, he was but the learner. Now he is the master. It's Cameron Porter.
What is up?
Master Porter, how are you, sir?
I'm well.
You ready to talk some Star Wars?
I'm ready to talk some Star Wars.
It feels like it's been months. I know it hasn't. Like, I understand that it's been 2 weeks since you were here, but I feel like with all of the the substitutions, thanks to Caleb, by the way, and the virtuals, and then the craziness that was the finale, I feel like we haven't had a time to just like chill, bro.
Yeah.
Get in here and just like, you know, stretch out a little bit. And it's like, not like, hurry up, we got to go. There's a show, and this feels nice. I like it. I'm glad that we're back.
I'm hoping that this is the first of a nice long stint of weeks with no craziness or interruptions or scheduling conflicts.
Well, sir, it's going to be a while before we have to worry about keeping up with the show, because we did just hours ago, as of this recording, which is, it's Wednesday, July 31st. It's going to be a while before we get Skeleton Crew. It has been announced. So I'm just going to jump right in with some Skeleton Crew news before we get into, our I would say our final for now, asterisk, our final for now Acolyte coverage. So,
and then I have a gift to bestow upon you.
Oh, let's get to the gift. Why don't we just start with it? Let me get a gift. Hold on. I'll
want a gift?
Let's give me the gift. I'll pull up the news. Just because I had it here, but then I lost it. So, while I'm looking that back up, what's the gift, man?
I've got something for you that we talked about weeks, probably at this point, months ago.
Probably months ago.
That I told you I would pull it out of my my archive, all of my fully organized backlog of Lego sets, and there it is, your Bad Batch shuttle to build.
Yeah, for those on YouTube, you get to see, but for those listening, this is the Havoc Marauder.
Yep,
it's the Bad Batch attack shuttle that Cameron's gonna let me put together for him.
Yep,
I'm excited. We got Gonky. We got look, it's tech.
Well,
how many times on this very podcast have I said those words? It's tech. Oh man,
actually.
What?
It's actually not tech because
what do you mean it's not tech?
I opened that set and peeled out all the minifigures, put them in a display case. So
there's no tech in here. Is that what you're telling me? It's not tech.
No.
This is feeling oddly familiar. I don't know if you listeners were listening to our Bad Batch coverage, but me screaming it's tech and then being told it's not tech, that's something I'm really used to.
I hate to say it.
So, but I'm excited to build the ship though. Yeah. That's going to be sick. I can't wait, man. What am I gonna watch? I've been getting this this urge to watch The Mandalorian.
Ooh, yep.
It's just in the air, man. I just want to watch Mando. I don't know why.
I was watching season 3, episode 2 the other night, I think. Just picked it up because I was thinking about it.
Is that the episode where they go to Mandalore and it ends with him seeing the Bo-Katan sees the mythosaur?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. I think that I really want to get back to season 3 of The Mandalorian. It's it's not my favorite of the 3 seasons. I think season 2 is probably my favorite. But I really enjoy them all. And I was just thinking the other day, there's this quote, Jon Favreau says it, I'm sure he wrote it. He says, one who knows doesn't speak, one who speaks doesn't know. It's him and Mando both say it. I think they say it together to Paz's
Yeah.
adopted son. It's actually from the Dao De Jing, funnily enough. I know we shout that out on the show time to time.
Yeah.
So it's a straight lift from that, but I just was thinking about that quote. It's
Is
really
that
good.
season 3? It was the episode where Grogu was training, or he had that little fight with the other kid.
Yeah, with Paz's kid.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he gets taken to the bird's nest
That's
or
right.
whatever. Yeah.
Whatever that weird thing is. So that I think it's maybe like episode 3 or 4 or something like that.
This is a good one.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I have an urge to watch that, but of course, like at the same time, like I've just been feeling a little bit nostalgic, I guess, perhaps, for season 1. I just want to go back and catch that.
Yeah.
So, and I think that like I'll definitely do a full Mandoverse rewatch as we get closer to Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
And like I said, it does seem like we're gonna have a good bit of time. We always knew it was kind of coming holiday season-ish, but
Don't tell me.
It seems like now it's going to be a while. It really it's going to take its time getting here. There's a lot of Star Wars news. Let's talk about some of the other stuff next week. We have some Marvel comic stuff to talk about. We have some book stuff to talk about.
Oh yeah.
I'd rather table that. Let's talk about Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Cameron, if you pull up on the Instagram, Star Wars Instagram, there's a bunch of new shots. So we've got some official shots here, and the show is going to be coming out December the 3rd, 2024. So December 3rd.
Okay.
So
that's not bad. My dad's birthday.
Oh, nice. I think it might be my grandpa's birthday.
Really?
Probably. Yeah. I'll have to check on that. Anyways, so we've got another 4 months. I guess that's not that bad.
No.
We're pretty close to August 3rd, so 8 to 12, 4 months. Okay, it's not too bad. But that means we've got 16 weeks until then to talk about Star Wars. What are we ever going to talk about? I don't know, but no, we got some ideas. That said, Skeleton Crew, December 3rd. These shots, Cameron, I don't know if you have it pulled up, listeners.
I'm looking at them.
Go ahead and go to Star Wars Instagram, or I'm sure the shots are everywhere. First shot here, we've got Jude Law's character. His name is Jod Nawood. Jodna? I guess that's his name. Sounds kind of strange, but I'm sure we'll get used to it.
Yeah.
And he's sitting next to a little Max Rebo. There's a couple kids on the outer sides, and then there's another kid that has a visor on. And I'm wondering if that character in Knights of the Old Republic, Cameron, there was, I think it was the second game. I could be wrong. There was a character, her name was Mrs. Var.
Mm-hmm.
And she was what was it? Marilucan. That was her race. And they don't see, like they don't have eyes. They don't see like we see. And they usually have like coverings over their eyes. And they sort of like see with the Force.
Okay.
And if you ever would switch to that character while playing, if I'm remembering right, it's been, 20 years. But when you switch to that character, if you look around to your party, you can actually see the Force alignment of the people. So if you were light side, they would kind of glow blue. If they were dark side, they would glow red. I don't think I'm misremembering that. So they can kind of see with the Force. Now, she was Force sensitive. She was trained to be a Jedi. So I don't know if his character would have that, but it would be an interesting little.
Yeah, that could be cool.
She'd be able to tell people's alignment by simply quote unquote looking at him.
Yeah.
So that's the first shot. Second shot is, we've seen this before. It's got Jude Law with all the other characters in the background. I'm excited to see Jude Law in action. What about you?
Yeah, same. His character looks great.
Yeah. Third shot, we've got a couple of again, we got a little Max Rebo kid and another kid pushing some speeders. I can already hear the outrage of the speeders. It seems like every time speeders show up, that happens.
As long as they're not involved in a 4 mile per hour chase, I'm gonna be okay with these speeders.
Hopefully, they've learned their lessons by now. I didn't find as much offense in the Acolyte one as I did the Book of Boba Fett stuff. But yeah, there was some speeder stuff in Episode 7 that people got a little bit upset about, but I didn't think it was that terrible. I mean, it's maybe not the best, but
nothing will compare to the Power Rangers.
Yeah, the Book of Boba Fett one, that one rang pretty odd to me. Okay, so now we've got the fourth shot here. All the kids got some flashlights. Looks very, like E.T., Stranger Things kind of vibes. Looking at this droid who I believe is named, and we'll get that name here in a second. And then we've got one last shot. Yep, they're riding around on the speeder. So
that one looks great.
Yeah, so the overall, like the sort of the snippet here that they tell us about the show says the story of 4 kids who find themselves lost in the vastness of the galaxy, trying to find their way back home. That is the plot description. Looks like the name of the ship is the Onyx Cinder. Yep. Interesting name. That's cool. I guess that was a Lego leak, Cameron.
I was just about to. I had that pulled up as well because that leaked like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
The pictures of the Lego set with names of the characters.
Yes.
Funnily enough, it looks a lot like the oh gosh, I can't remember what the name of it is, but the Knights of Ren's ship.
Yep. I don't know what it's
there was
called
a Lego
either,
ship. There was a Lego set of that as well. It's gonna bug the crap out. I'll just blurt it out in the middle of something later on.
I'm sure it'll come back to you. Yeah. Also, just for the people that aren't watching, I've got Cameron's favorite Star Wars movie back here. I got all these posters of The Force Awakens. He was so excited when he walked in. All right, so the 4 kids, they're named. So the actors and their names: Ravi Cabot Conyers plays Wim. Kyriana Crater plays KB. Robert Timothy Smith plays Neil. And Ryan Kiera Armstrong plays Fern. Nick Frost will be lending his voice for a new droid named SM-33.
Ooh.
Which I think that we're recording on SM-33s. I believe that's the name of these microphones. So
I got a 57.
Well, it's something like that. So I mean, I'm interested. I will say that by listening to the description, by looking at the photos, the fact that it's centered around all these kids, I would just give a soft recommendation to brace yourself. not even in terms of the quality. It's just like this will be a very easy show to hate on. It just seems like it almost doesn't matter. It could be as great as season 1 of Stranger Things, and which I'm not necessarily saying that, although there's kind of been that talk of it kind of having that sort of vibe.
Yeah.
But it could be that good and people are still going to hate on it. It just seems like an easy target. Just
based off of the images, I'm already getting vibes that it's more like Stranger Things was weird because it was childish and kiddie.
Yes.
But it was also like terrifying at the same time.
It was dark. Yeah.
So I definitely see that even more in these images. I would almost say that those images make me think the show's going to be more kid targeted than I was even thinking.
So
which makes me a little bit speculative.
Sure.
But
I'll tell you how it's been described. It's been described, and it's the showrunner and the guy who came up with the show was John Watts. John Watts is the director for the Spider-Man trilogy with Tom Holland.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've watched those, if you feel any kind of way. I mean, generally speaking, I've liked them. I've enjoyed them.
I think I saw the first one, maybe.
Yeah. So basically, like, Jon Favreau plays Happy, and he's in those films, and so I guess they were on set of the last one, and John Watts pitched Jon Favreau this idea, and here we are.
Oh wow.
And it's been described as having a tone similar to Amblin Productions in the 80s. Amblin being Steven Spielberg's production company. So movies like E.T. or The Goonies, a.k.a. Stranger Things
Kid
vibes.
adventure.
Yeah. So the way it looks is the way it's been described. This isn't like to me, it's not a surprise or any kind of bait and switch or anything like that. It seems like that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
Now, the question, as always, is just, is it executed well? I mean, we'll see. Because you could say the Acolyte is like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or Frozen meets Kill Bill, and you can decide if it met those expectations or not, or if it was executed in that way or not.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. I mean, I, as always, remain optimistic. Like, I like to, I don't see any harm in being that way. So I'm excited for it. I think that time of year, I get really excited around Christmas. So I'm stoked. And honestly, I'm glad to have a Star Wars series airing during that time. Because if you remember, Mando Season 1, Mando Season 2, and Book of Boba Fett to some degree were all in that holiday season.
Yeah.
And so it's going to kind of feel like that again. There's like a little little chill in the air. Like, I like that. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope that it'll be good, like I always do, and I'm excited. But I can already feel the hatred flowing through. It just
well, I mean, I think Star Wars viewership. I really believe that because of how so many people felt about the Acolyte, I think Star Wars is going to be fighting an uphill battle for any new projects after this. Like, you know, a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I'm canceling my Disney Plus membership. I'm never watching Star Wars again." Blah blah blah. But based off of what I could tell, people were like for real about it this time around. So I would imagine that viewership is going to be down just by default because there are people that are just, you know, swearing off Star Wars. Maybe
I just don't see any of it as being all that new. I feel like, yes, there was a lot of hate, but it doesn't, for whatever reason, to me, it just doesn't feel any different.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's hard to say. Yes, it seemed louder, but it didn't seem any quote unquote realer to me. It feels like the same people saying the same stuff that they're always saying. I would say that it does seem, culturally speaking, that we're at an all-time high of critics.
Yeah.
There's a lot of podcasts that I grew really fond of that I've essentially just stopped listening to because they're just critical about everything. They seem like they have a difficult time finding joy in anything.
Yeah.
I think that's in the air, but at the same time, like, maybe it's because I talk to kids. Like, I have, you know, students that are young, like, you know, 11, 12, 13. Some of them listen to this pod. Shout out, kids. And you know, they're like, oh, it's great. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
They just don't have the same baggage. I think that I'm not even discrediting what you're saying. It may be true. I have no way of none of us really have any way of knowing. I don't have the Disney Plus subscriber numbers. I saw some numbers at one point that seemed to indicate that the Acolyte was doing fairly well, but those numbers could all be false or inflated.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It seems like every time something comes around, there's a negative take to it and a positive take to it. I will say that Star Wars YouTube especially feels like it really popped off and on the negative side this time around. But
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that's just the trend for most things these days. It just feels in line with the culture. I don't know. I don't think we're not even necessarily saying conflicting things, but I guess we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe just with the spirit of Christmas, everyone will be having a good time. Who knows? Maybe it will be like that Mando season 1 magic all over again. I mean, you never know.
Night Buzzard.
I will say this. I have heard. What's Night Buzzard?
That's the Knights of Ren ship I was thinking about earlier.
Is it really? Is that what it's called?
The Night Buzzard.
Interesting.
99% sure.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. You said that's what would happen, and that's exactly what happened. I will say that I saw some rumors, I'm air quoting real heavy here, because I mean, they're just rumors, but that the Skeleton Crew was having some production difficulties even now, and that Lucasfilm is not happy with it. And the actual headline was like, Lucasfilm not happy with Skeleton Crew, sources citing lack of identity politics. Like, who said that?
Lack
of identity politics as being a problem. Which say what you want about the Acolyte, I don't really. While there may have been inclusion of different things, I didn't really feel like I was watching identity politics. It didn't feel. I know there was people calling it woke this or woke that. I don't think that was a legitimate criticism, but
yeah.
You know, your mileage may vary. But that said, I'm like, okay, what's going on with this rumor? And I opened it up, and it was literally just someone on Twitter saying, probably because of the lack of identity, just some random person. Yeah. And it's like, these are now headlines. So just remember, as you're taking things in, we should all remember this. You're going to read a headline, and the source is literally just somebody with a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it takes these days. And I'll share this quick story, and then we'll talk about the Acolyte. This will be a nice transition. I was in line for Deadpool and Wolverine the other day.
Nice.
I went with the Galactic crew. Shout out to Galactic Comics here in Florence. We all went to a Friday morning showing.
Nice.
And so I'm hanging in line, and of course, it's a bunch of nerds. Of course, it was like
the worst.
Oh man, that new Star Wars show, and this is just this is all this is saying. I'm not trying to discredit anyone. Everyone should be entitled to their own opinion, but I do think that sometimes when we hear certain things, you should consider the source. Like, I don't think that everyone, like Cameron, I care so much more about what you think about a Star Wars show than, I don't know, my neighbor next door who doesn't, catches it from time to time.
Right, yeah.
Consider the source.
Mm-hmm.
So, these guys were talking about the Acolyte, and the guy was like, man, the fight scenes were terrible. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I thought they were quite good. I enjoyed the fight scenes. Like, episode 5 was killer. Like,
I can see you. I can see you standing there in line, just like clenching your fists slowly.
Yeah, right. I don't let this stuff bother me. I like what I like. But no, he was like talking trash about it, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. Like, of all the things to hate on, the fight scenes, that's funny. And as he went a little bit further, he was like, yeah, like I was watching a video online, and they were taking the fight scenes from the Acolyte, and they were showing them against what was it? What was it? Not the original movies. What were the ones that were set before the original trilogy? The guy he's talking to goes, the prequels? He's like, yeah, the prequels, yeah. So it was the showing the fighting of the prequels, and it was that one where Anakin was fighting and I'm sitting here like, bro. If you can't remember Obi-Wan's name,
yeah,
like all that to say, I'm not trying to say that the fighting was as good as the Battle of Heroes at the end of Revenge. I'm not saying that. Like, that was epic. It was also the conclusion to a 6-part saga. It was George Lucas spending 3 years and all of his time and all of his money and all of his budget, months and months of preparation, and it's like you don't get that in a Disney Plus show. It just doesn't happen. But just, it's okay to compare things, I suppose. I would just say keep it in context, and keep in context that guy. I'm just saying, like, he's over here talking about how Star Wars, it's like, come on, man, you don't even, like, I'm not trying to say he's not a Star Wars fan. I'm sure he likes Star Wars. But, like, to hear that, and that's a lot of people talking negatively about Star Wars. That you don't, when you just see something online, even a YouTube video, even this podcast, we're just people. But, like, you really should consider that you don't know anybody's credentials.
Yeah.
And because everybody has internet access, and I like that. I like that everyone can share their opinions. It's just maybe we don't put as much weight on everyone's opinion.
Yeah.
Am I out of line? Like,
no, I mean, it seems like people are just looking for the loudest voice in the room to kind of articulate things in a way that they can, like, kind of get behind. And this is not just Star Wars. That's like the whole world.
Yeah.
So, if the biggest YouTuber is talking about, look at this fight scene compared to the Duel of the Fates or whatever, it's like, God, he's right. I mean, look, if you take the Acolyte and you compare it to Revenge of the Sith in front of me, I hate the Acolyte. I'll never watch it again. It's terrible garbage. Like,
I see what you mean.
You can't, like, if you compare things like that. Plus, I heard somebody talking a little bit about how we set our expectations for Star Wars now in a way where we expect, like, we remember we had such high expectations, or like the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy or whatever, like, meant so much to you and it spoke so loudly that you're looking for that to be replicated in everything else that comes out, which is not going to be the case. So you're always going to be, if Empire Strikes Back is pinnacle Star Wars for you,
you're right, and
you're looking at the Acolyte expecting to feel the way that you felt watching Empire Strikes Back, you're setting yourself up for, like, total failure.
Wow. Yeah, I see what you mean. We've talked about this on the show plenty of times, with the idea of just kind of going into things very, like, open to just, like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Because you're right. Like, And I think it's important to say, like, we get into this place these days, and I think this is, again, a societal thing. These things are coming to us every 6 months. Like, dude, think of this. Used to be, you had to wait 3 years for new Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And it was what would now equate to hundreds of millions of dollars. And they are spending that kind of money on these shows, don't get me wrong. But it would be these grand, crazy things, right? And you would get it every 3 years. Out of my mouth, not 20 minutes ago, I was like, gosh, we got to wait so long until the next Star Wars. It's going to be less than 5 months in between these shows.
Yeah.
And so, like, I heard someone say it. Maybe it might have been Jordan on our show last week. But I've heard the sentiment elsewhere as well. It's this idea of, like, you guys, it used to be a decade, years and years and years between things.
Mm-hmm.
We get it so fast now. And, like, there is a difference between TV and the cinema. They're just not the same. And we could talk about the quality range of the films, and sure, you can have those conversations, but it is something to keep in mind. You're right. Like, when you compare this to that, they're just not the same. It's apples and oranges. Again, it's like, what, you're going to not eat apples because you like oranges better? Like, they're two different things. I don't know, man. So,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of suspense that builds too in waiting, a lot of anticipation. When your favorite band comes out with a good album,
sure,
every 5 years, you get so excited for it. But then when they switch it up and they come out with an EP 3 times a year, you still love it. But it's like, oh, cool, it's very different. It's like, oh, cool, they're coming out with a new EP. Nice, they just did that a couple weeks ago. But, like, great, I'll listen to more.
That's a great point. Like, today, I just went on a walk and listened to an EP. Actually, it was like, and I like EPs for that reason. Me and Cameron are big music guys. If you guys are just tuning in, and so, like, let me put on an EP and go on a quick walk. It's great. I love it. But sometimes I like to put on an album, lay on my back on my couch, close my eyes, and just listen to a record for, 40 minutes to an hour, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're just two very different experiences. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's like, be mindful of what it is, and maybe don't try to think that everything has to be The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
It's nice when things are The Empire Strikes Back, but some things are just trying to be something different.
Yeah, I kind of have given up, and this might sound a little bit pessimistic or morbid, but
only if you stop it, I've kind of given up.
Yeah, I've kind of given up on getting really, really excited about new Star Wars stuff. And it doesn't mean that I enjoy it any less when it comes out, but it's like the way that I felt when I went to the movie theaters and saw Rogue One will never be, like, topped. I don't think Disney Star Wars can do it. I don't think they can create content at this point that would get me. I mean, well, no. I mean, like, in the as far as, like, the streaming era is what I'm saying. Like, with the shows and stuff.
But maybe when the films come back.
I just nothing has come down the pipeline that I've been like, oh, this is going to be the best thing ever. It's like Andor came out. Oh, that sounds really interesting. Ahsoka comes out. Oh, that sounds really cool. Acolyte. Oh, that's, like, it. I just don't have. And like I said, maybe that's like a pessimistic way to look at it, but I don't have it in me to get really, really excited about something and then get let down. So I would rather sit back and consume and process, just kind of within the right context of what it is that I'm watching, and then move on from that.
Yeah, that's a way to go through the world. I understand it. I like to live the opposite.
Yeah.
And I don't mind if something, quote unquote, doesn't live up to my expectations.
Yeah.
Because I at least get to experience the exhilaration of being excited for it. Like, it doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't nullify that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, sometimes something may not be quite as grand as I might expect it, but I think that even, like, there's even a way to get excited for something and try to not necessarily attribute too many finer points to it. Like,
yeah, sure.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but just being open to what might develop. Like, you might have an idea and it might be very different. And sometimes when something happens that's different than what I thought, it makes me even more excited.
Yeah.
Because it's like, wow, you just blew my mind because I didn't even consider that that's what it could be.
Right.
Which is how I felt watching The Acolyte almost every week. And so it's interesting. It's there's no right or wrong way to go through the world necessarily.
Yeah.
You know, you can say, oh, well, if I'm too optimistic, I'm gonna get let down. If I'm too pessimistic, well, at least then maybe sometimes I'll get surprised in a positive way. Like I've heard that. Again, I choose to live my life that, you know, the former way than the latter, but it's one of those things where we just have to figure it out for ourselves. Like, it's just what I guess works for you and what makes you a more fulfilled person. And I think that maybe even sometimes we can flip-flop in that way. Like, we might go through a season of feeling one way and then go through a season of feeling another. Let me ask you this. I'm very curious, as you were talking about Rogue One. When you went to go watch Rogue One, how were you feeling about it? Like, what did you think was going to happen? Were you like expectations through the roof or what?
I honestly didn't really know what to expect. And I don't think, I was just trying to think about that. I don't think I knew, because I definitely was not consuming Star Wars or keeping up with the news at that point the way that I do now. I may have not even known that it was going to lead right up into A New Hope.
Yeah.
I just remember being excited that I was seeing Star Wars in theaters again. And then that movie just like it had everything. That, I mean, and I've said this before.
It's a great film.
Top two Star Wars movies for me will always be, I think, Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One.
Love it.
Rogue One had everything. The visuals were great. The characters were great. It had all the ships I wanted, all the cool clone variants or stormtrooper variants that I wanted. It just, from start to finish, that was a perfect movie in my mind.
I love Rogue One. It's great. And I love Andor. I mean, and so I am excited for season 2. It's interesting that you were excited for it. You didn't quite know what to expect.
Yeah.
And then it kind of blew you away. So, that in some ways does have to go with this.
Well, that says a lot about, like, what would it have been like watching Acolyte with no outside opinions or no leaks, rumor, like, and I'm talking about, like, if I just turned on Disney Plus one day, it was like, whoa, there's 3 whole weeks worth of a new Star Wars show that's out that I didn't know about.
I
like,
had no idea.
I might have looked at it way differently than us speculating and knowing things and reading articles and hearing stuff about it, and then me keeping my finger on the pulse of, like, the fandom and, like, seeing what people are saying about it, listening to those loudest voices in the room just to kind of see how everybody's feeling about it.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, I know I've talked to Jim Stevens, who's been on the pod, and he's that way. He doesn't like to speculate. He doesn't like to hear anything. He just wants to go in cold. And I would say that I don't mind the speculating because, again, to me it's a creative process. It's like a creative act to do that. So it just adds to the fun for me. Yeah. And if you're able to not be so tied to your expectations of what might happen, and you basically, if your expectation gets either fulfilled or if your expectation gets flipped on its head, if you can find the joy in either of those, then no harm, no foul. Right. But even like the idea of like listening to certain people on the internet, at least for me, I'm very careful about that. Like, there are just some people, there's some like almost like energy, if you want to say, it's just like, nah, I just don't want to have that kind of vibe because it can mess with you and cause you to feel different ways. I think of it as just like, what kind of people do I want to surround myself around, if that makes sense? Like, I'll hang out with you, but there are a lot of people that, would have weird energy or vibes about Star Wars. I'm just like, I don't want to do a podcast with that guy. And it's fine. Like, everybody, it's not even like a condemnation of them or even necessarily a judgment. It's just like, just not for me. Which, I don't know. It's interesting, but I see where you're coming from, and I think in a lot of ways I line up with it. So we'll see about Skeleton Crew. Yeah. I'm excited I imagine a trailer is going to be here in a couple months, and I'll be excited to break it down and see what it's going to be like. I'm very curious about the tone.
Yeah, me too.
It seems like it'll be something fresh and different, and I've been liking that in Star Wars lately. I like the fresh and different. So
I'm gonna say maybe it'll be live action Rebels vibe.
Ooh,
that's kind of what I'm
I could I could get behind that. Let's switch over to the Acolyte.
You're listening to Star Wars After Party. We're honored that you would join us. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube for video and wherever you get your podcasts for audio. If you would like to help the pod grow, consider sharing with the Star Wars fans in your life. In addition, leaving 5 stars on Apple or Spotify, giving the video a like, or leaving a comment on YouTube are extremely helpful. Written reviews are the best way to help the podcast reach new listeners. We appreciate your support. Lastly, we want to hear from you. Record a voice memo on your phone and send it over to starwarsafterparty@gmail.com. Written email works too. Now, back to the after party.
All right, so going through this entire season, I did my rewatch.
All right.
And there was obviously just a lot that we didn't know the first time that we know now. And so there were a few things that popped out. And what I did was just make notes for each episode. So maybe we'll go episode by episode.
Yeah.
I'll mention the new things I saw, get your take on it. If you have new things you want to throw in on top, great. And that can just be the structure for the next 30 minutes or so.
All right.
Episode 1, I noticed that all the younglings had to bow to Vernestra as they left the room.
Mm-hmm.
I missed that. And I was like, wow, just the reverence of the Almighty. Felt
what was her
strange.
role again? What was her title?
I don't know what her title is. It seemed like she was, I don't know the official title, but like the head of the small council. I don't know what they called it. She was. It's not the Grand Council, but it was some kind of subset council. Yeah. I noticed again a bit of foreshadowing when Osha gets captured with all those prisoners. They say, "Is it true you killed a Jedi?"
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting because I bet we get that same line if we get a season 2. Everything is if we get a season 2. I'm going to pretend like we are as we speculate. I bet we get that same line. Is it true you killed a Jedi? Like, we're going to get the same thing, but now it's, yes, actually, it is true.
Yeah,
I
actually.
just love the parallel there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little line that I got. All right, so next one, she said, my sister is dead. You lie. This is what May said to Osha. And my response was, wait, huh? Why did she think that? But then later on, she said she was looking for her.
Yeah.
So is it that she was looking for her, but then she gave up and thought she was dead? I don't understand why May assumed Osha was dead. That's not clear to me.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. And that created some of the confusion in me early on in the season, rewatching it, because now we know how things develop between Osha and May. And there were a couple of times in this first episode and the second one when I was like, I needed to pause for a second and be like, okay, which one is May? Which one is Osha? Because that was very confusing to me that May was like, yeah, my sister's dead, because she would have no indication that she was dead.
Yeah, there's no body. I thought that she would have assumed that
there would have been no reports that
they would have gone. She just would have gone to be a Jedi.
Yeah,
That's what they wanted her to do. So
unless she was talking about it figuratively,
I don't think so. But perhaps. Okay. I don't want to rag on Gager too hard, but the out of context clip that I played, you can tell I'm still a little bitter about that.
I can hear it.
I'm really not. The starfish guy looks Sol straight in the eye and tells him, beware and Sol cuts him off. Beware, Osha, she's going to kill you, bro. I've seen it. Mm-hmm. Which is one of my speculations, by the way. When I brought that clip up, I was like, does Osha turn to the dark side and take Sol out? That's exactly what happened. So, again, say what you want about Sol and kind of the path he went down, but again, that feels like one of those things where it's like someone is trying to tell the Jedi something, and the Jedi just
silence them.
Don't want to hear it.
I know better.
Just saying.
Yeah.
I'm not a Jedi hater. I'm just saying. I'm just watching what's on screen. All right. So, and then the last couple of things, the vision where Kid May talks with Osha, she says, I'll kill them all. And when she does, her eyes go black, like she was possessed.
I noticed that this time too.
So does that mean that, I don't know if it means that Mother Coral possessed May, but we certainly see in the, I think it's in the 7th episode, that flashback episode, that she is definitely the one that spurs May on.
Yeah.
She's like, you should go. Like she's just doing what her mother told her to do. So that's just an interesting thing. And then he and then just put on here just because it ties in later is he catches her in this episode because we were talking about how like earlier he was trying to hold the bridges up versus just holding her up, and in this episode he does catch her, and I wonder if that's like one of those things where he replayed that moment over and over and over, and if he could redo it again he would have just held them up versus trying to stop them from fall. I don't know. I wonder if there's some kind of symbolism or something there. So those were my notices for the first episode. They were just hit a little different or popped out. Yeah. In the second viewing.
I enjoyed this episode more the second time, and thinking about it in the context of the whole season, I thought it was a great episode, and it made me. The first 2 episodes of this show, I think, were fantastic, and going back and rewatching them after how the show concluded, I feel a bit disappointed.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't enjoy. Like, I enjoyed the pacing of the first 2 episodes. I was like immediately locked in because, and we've talked about this before. Like, with brand new characters, you gotta get buy-in really quick from viewers to feel emotionally invested in the characters. And like, they set up such a great foundation with these first 2 episodes that I feel like the season ended up bouncing around a lot more. It was so focused on miscommunication and like. The season as a whole just didn't feel very like.
It feels like the soul you get at the beginning is not the same soul at the end.
Yeah, but
is it that? Or?
But yeah, well, I mean, just the way that the episodes flowed, it felt very like discombobulated, maybe, and maybe that was intentional. Maybe we can just say that that was an intent there, but it didn't feel. It didn't feel good watching it the second time.
I've noticed as I try to like put things together creatively myself, it's very, very difficult. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of people don't understand this because even as someone who has worked in music and things in the past, like this is a lesson that I'm really learning hard right now. It is difficult to create a story idea, to make a story, and then to just actually execute it. It's very tough. It's not an easy thing to do because there are certain things that you think are coming through on screen that just may not. And it's a challenge. It's very challenging. And while I think a lot of the things that you're describing, I sort of take the different way, like where I'm like, yeah, they're not what I thought they were. And yeah, it was like kind of jarring. And I think that is almost like the experience of what it feels like to be in those situations. And so in that way, I'm like, yeah, cool, great. There also could be some of what the other thing, which is it's just hard to tell a story. That's also why I generally, even if something's not, I don't really rate things, but 10 out of 10, my favorite, I still try to be understanding because, man, I know, I'm just saying, like, for people who may not, it is hard. I've been doing these, like, 10-minute YouTube videos, and it's like, it is hard to put it together. It's very difficult to even make just a story that long make sense. It
needed to display miscommunication on screen without confusing the viewer. And there was a lot of times, first time and second time through, even knowing how things ended, that I was like, things were moving too fast, or I don't know. There was just something about it. But anyway, that's kind of overall, not episode specific. But like this episode in general, I was like, oh yeah, here we go. This was a really good one because it moved really fast. We got a lot of context, like right from the jump, and then moved on to the next episode.
To the next episode. Episode 2, this quote, Soul tells Yord, "Don't let fear affect your judgment."
Great line.
And I'm like,
hypocritical line.
When you killed Mother Anastasia.
Yeah.
That is what I feel like happened, by the way. It would be a Jedi's moral imperative to react out of a place of calmness.
Yeah.
And I feel like that if Soul had been able to do that, and I think it's spelled out plenty in that episode that he wasn't, then all this stuff that transpired would not have happened.
Yeah.
And so you can view that line as Soul having learned from that mistake. But personally, I read it more like Soul thought that he had done that work, but maybe he had not quite.
Oh, definitely had not.
So that's just my take. Okay. Let's jump some couple things that maybe don't make sense, and I'm trying to make it make sense. We've talked about Torben taking his life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say it like this: Torben facing May, he decided to kill himself. It's very, very twisted, but I'm trying to make it make sense. If a Jedi should only ever act in defense, then did Torben understand that it was going to have to end in bloodshed, and that maybe through his meditation he realized that it was just better for him to lay down his life? There's a quote, no greater love than one who would lay down his life for a brother. I'm not... It's so twisted because you're tangled up in this is suicide, and it makes it so much more difficult to talk about.
Right.
But versus, like, say, Obi-Wan, who just kind of let Vader take him out. Like, it's different.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to make it make sense, and that's still one of the things I'm just like, oh.
The second time through trying to, like, process this whole scenario, he tells her, like, what is it, the first words out of his mouth are, "I've been waiting for you."
Yes.
I kind of take that as, he's trying to.
Did he see this moment coming?
No, I think he knew that it would end this way, and I think by him, like, living in that meditative state, he was hoping that maybe he could live out the rest of his days in peace, safeguarded by the Force. But deep down, he knew May would end up coming for him.
But that's weird because how did he know May was alive? It's one of those.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he must have spent all those years trying so hard to put himself to peace with it, knowing deep down, like, it's 5:10 and you need to be somewhere by 5:15, and now it's 5:16 and you need to be somewhere by 5:15, and it's like. You think, well, maybe if I just drive a little bit faster, maybe if I blah, 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 I can still make it there on time.
Yeah.
But in the back of your mind, I'm still late. So that's kind of where I put it in Torben's mind of, like, he's trying really hard to, like, make sense of it and move forward. But in the back of his mind, he knew all along that it would end in blood or some kind of vengeance from May.
Small little question about Torben. Torben was a Master Torben. He had been in his trance for over 10 years.
That's a great
16
question.
years. So that means that he had less than 6 years to become a knight and then a master.
Yeah.
Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, would like to have a word with Master Torben.
No kidding.
So, my Star Wars nerd cap is like, wait a minute, Leslie Edlin. I'm like pushing the glasses up.
Anakin never screwed up that bad either. So
yeah, I don't understand how he became both a knight and a master in that time. It just doesn't make sense.
He was so focused on his studies. That's why he was dying to get back to Coruscant.
I guess maybe that's what it was. Last insight for this episode, and I do seem to have less and less as the time goes on, just because I feel like once we got into later episodes, I was a little bit more locked in on what was happening, whereas there's, like, so many breadcrumbs in these first few that you just don't know until you go back. But last thing is Chimera saying, "Please don't do the memory wipe thing on me," like he eventually does to May.
Yeah.
I just like that little bit of foreshadow. Episode 3, the first shot of Bryndock in episode 3, and you see it in 7 too. It's just that stonework that we see in Ahsoka that seems to indicate that, like, the same kind of witchery that's going on in Peridia and in wherever that planet was that I can't remember in Ahsoka, the part 4. Same kind of things happening here, even though they're not quote unquote Night Sisters. It just seems like there's some similar stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of May said, "When I can't find you, I look here," talking about the trio on Bryndock. I imagine that's where they will come back together in season 2. Just seems like something that will happen. When Coral grabs the girls, the last thing she says to them is, "The rules are for your safety." I just thought that was kind of interesting. Also, Yor dying. Yor died the one time that he didn't follow the rules.
Yeah.
So the rules are for your safety. I don't know. That just stuck out to me. What the thread has put together, no one can separate May and Osha. And I wrote, not the Sith or the Jedi.
Yeah.
So whatever ends up happening in the long run,
Right.
I think that May and Osha will come back together. I speculated that they'll literally come back together and their name will be Mayosha, just kind of as a joke with Kayla. But no, I think that is foreshadowing that they eventually will come back. And Jedi, Sith, none of that will matter. They'll have each other.
Yeah, knowing where we get with the mind wipe thing,
right?
That's a really good point to make. That we'll see. They'll have to come back together.
We'll see. Soul hands Osha the lightsaber that will eventually kill him, and May shakes her head no.
Yeah.
That's just an interesting thing, too.
Yep.
This advice that they were given before doing the Jedi test, whatever is in your heart, you must say the opposite. And that led to that was just one of the things that led to all this destruction.
Yeah. So
just this idea of, lying, of not going after the thing that you know you should. It's like terrible advice. Destiny is not decided for you by some anonymous force. You get to make the choice, Osha.
Yep.
I like that idea. We talked about it when it first happened, but it's for whatever reason stuck out to me again. I said, soul rushing Osha away from her mom's dead body hits way different now. Now that you know that he's the one that
killed her.
Happen.
Yeah, he didn't want to have to look at it any longer.
Yes.
Let alone make her.
Yeah, that was wild. Any thoughts on 3 before we move on?
No, just I didn't like the. Gosh, I'm not trying to be like all.
You can just
negative
say how you feel.
tonight.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
The conflicting ideas of the whole, like, she can make choices for herself, and then literally in the next scene, you don't know what you want. It's always changing.
Yes.
Just
I still think both those things are true.
They're both true, but it just seemed inconsistent for the context of what they were trying to.
When we consider the titles, which I very much view as things that transform into each other, the idea of destiny or calling or purpose, however you want to describe it, there's a story unfolding in our universe, and we are playing some part in it.
Yeah.
The truth is that while there might be some destiny, you do get to make choices. And so I like the idea of them saying, like, you get to make a choice and your mind might change, because that is true. We get to choose in some way what our destiny is. It's a very convoluted thing. You get into the idea of like free will versus determinism, but I don't know. There's something about those ideas that you seem, because we had this, I remember from before, I just don't necessarily view them as being opposing, but I do understand where you're coming from at the same time.
Well, it seemed very conflicting in the way that you see it from the parent's perspective of like, we're kind of changing the lesson up to get to our desired like outcome.
That feels so true though.
Yeah.
It feels like I feel like I do that sometimes. Like I feel like I will know, I'll have the wisdom, and then the very next moment I will act contrary to that. I feel like that's just a very true thing to life. It feels very human. Like I was talking with a friend earlier today. It's like, it's always about the return. Like you may know the way, and you may have had some growth or some wisdom, and you will forget it, and you'll have to return to it. Like, it feels like they told her the truth and the thing that she should do, which is, you make the decision, not some random force. And then they turn around and they lie because they're trying to protect, it feels like this is just something that I don't know.
I didn't remember. One thing that did stick out to me on this episode was that I didn't remember how badly Osha wanted to be a Jedi. Like she reiterates that over and over. And in fact, it all comes to a head in this right before this trial that they go and have with the Jedi, basically.
Right.
Of I don't want to be a witch. I want to be a Jedi. And like how much that would have stung her mom and her sister, but that lashing out of like, I'm trying to be honest with you, like this is not what I want. It was very ironic to me. The witches left wherever they were to establish their own coven so that they could do what?
Do whatever they wanted.
Do what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
But yet you can't allow your own daughter to do what she wants to do and leave because her path is taking her down another.
Yeah.
So
this is part of the commentary of the show, is like the idea that we think that what is right or good for us is right and good for everyone, but we all walk different paths. That's just the way it is. Like the older I get, the more I'm like, this is what I did, and I'm so glad I did it. Would you recommend it? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Like it's just we all have to walk different paths, and so it's very difficult to judge someone or condemn someone for doing something when it's just like, I don't know where you're from and I don't know where you're going. If it just feels disingenuous to imagine it different. I hope that I like that way of thinking. Hopefully I'll feel that way tomorrow. All right. Episode 4. There's a prophecy about killing a Jedi without a weapon. It doesn't seem like Chimere truly understood that prophecy. So where did that prophecy come from? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he says you kill a Jedi without a weapon. When he saw it unfold in the 8th episode, he seemed to kind of go like, oh,
that's what. Yeah.
So where did the prophecy come from? Did it come from Plagueis? It's still very up in the air.
Yeah, I guess it would have had to. I mean, I would say yeah, because Chimere is, if it's correct that Plagueis is Chimere's master, then Chimere's acting, to his own. He wants to fulfill the prophecy, but he's trying to twist it in his own way to where it satisfies his ultimate end goals.
Mm-hmm.
So
but he doesn't understand the prophecy.
He doesn't understand. He's just like kind of regurgitating words, like,
right?
Yeah, this is the prophecy, man. This is what's going to happen. He's in his mind, like, no idea how, but this is what it said.
Other thing from episode 4 that stuck out: Osha talks about May to Sol, and she says she's a murderer, and Sol answers, "She's still your family," and it's just like, whew.
Talking to himself.
Baby. We're always just talking to ourselves. Episode 5. What was that thing? That's how the Jedi talked about Chimere.
Yeah.
When Chimere kills Jeki, and Sol says Jeki, he goes, was that its name? And I just thought it was interesting that both sides are dehumanizing the other.
Yep.
Sounds a bit familiar to me.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Next thing I got a quote here. Sol, why did he say that? Why did he say I shouldn't trust you? What did you do? And, of course, they separate after this moment. Mm-hmm. So they never get the answer to that. He tells her, I'll tell you when we get back on the ship.
Yeah, and then, yeah.
And the other thing I have here is, and I didn't write who said this, but I have some idea. He says, you followed a false master. And the response is, so did you. So who's the false master? I should have done a better job with that note here. I'm imagining Chimere is the one who said, so
that's what I was thinking too.
You followed a false master. Must have been Osha or no, maybe it was Jeki. I don't know. I'm confused. I should have done a better job. Whoops. Sorry, y'all. I watched these episodes before last week's podcast, not this week's. All right. Moving on to episode 6. Again, I get a little... Oh, sorry. Before we move on from episode 5, Night, the episode with the big fight, anything that stuck out to you in that episode before we jump to 6?
No, this is one of those episodes that I would... So I don't know if Acolyte is going to be a show that I go back and rewatch, but it is very similar to some other streaming Star Wars shows where it's got these really good episodes kind of peppered in. So, I could kind of, this will be a show that I'll skip around a little bit and like go rewatch this episode, watch half of that one, whatever. This will be one of those.
Okay. Interesting.
For sure.
Yeah, episode 5 we were riding high on episode 5, and I gotta say it's still a banger.
Yeah.
This is where my notes start to get less and less. Sol, episode 6, Sol couldn't tell it was May instead of Osha because they're the same person apparently.
Yeah.
Because we were all like, how can he tell that they're different? And we sort of get the answer, and maybe that's where Sol kind of realized, like, yo, y'all are the same person because even I can't tell you apart. Like, your force energies are the same. I don't know.
That's a good point to make because that still like bothered me.
Maybe that's
why. Sol would be this wise master, but he can't tell May from Osha. I mean, maybe because their force levels are like the same or something.
I think also part of it is that his anxieties were clouding his vision. Like, we can't not look at that.
Yeah.
Like, I think Soul, the way that I take the show watching it again is Soul was descending further and further into darkness. Fear was really, really getting a hold on to him as this lie that he's been telling for years was really unraveling. I think that's another. There's lots of ways that I can describe this show, and maybe this is why people have a bit of a hard time. If you were to ask me, what is the Acolyte really about? I would have to write it down, and I would give you about 5 or 10 different answers.
Yeah.
I interpret it a lot of different ways, but one of the ways that we can talk about the show is it's a lie that slowly unravels. Right? Like, that definitely is what happened. And so I think that because of that lie coming up and closer and closer and closer to the surface, Soul descended further and further down as he was fearful of this lie coming out. So,
yeah, because he's been able to live like exempt from it for so long. So that would explain his ability to become a successful master. All of this stuff was kind of out of sight, out of mind. Now here we are, he's being faced with all of it at once, where he spent years instead of trying to cover up or prepare his lie again.
Right.
He's been living like nothing ever happened.
Right.
Suffering on the inside, but not living as if he's ever going to have to face what he did.
Yeah, not really facing it, thinking that it's gone. But again, it always seems to come back. Episode 7. I read this so much differently the second time because I just needed another rewatch. I mentioned Torben, and I've heard lots of people have the same critique. I was just kind of like, maybe I missed something, and I did. I remember talking about this episode when we first chatted, this idea that Torben, it's like, he just wanted to go home.
Yeah.
Torben was depressed.
Mm-hmm.
This is shown to us by his lack of appetite. And depression, we can talk about it all day. One of the ways I like to think about depression, but something that I've heard that really sticks with me is that a lot of times depression occurs in us when we are living outside of our purpose. And I think that Torben was lacking purpose, and therefore he was in a depressed state. So him wanting to leave and go do something was simply because he was feeling unfulfilled and didn't really have a purpose. And Dara was trying to, I would say she was trying to teach him, but really she was trying to allow him to come to the idea that, like, as a Jedi, Yoda says, like, excitement, thrills, Jedi don't live for such things. Like, this is not what it's about. And I think that Torben had not yet learned that lesson.
Yeah.
And because he wasn't understanding the purpose of a Jedi and what he should be doing, he was just kind of in this depressed state, and that's why he wanted to leave so bad.
Yeah, you missed the forest for the trees. It's like the whole, like, Mr. Miyagi type thing. It's like, I need to be learning moves right now, not how to wash windows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
it's like,
yes, he was living outside of his purpose, but that doesn't mean that there was nothing for him to learn from that experience. And as an apprentice, you're kind of at a place where, like, you just kind of take stuff and take it for what it is, and then, move on later. So it can't be, I don't like this. This isn't my purpose. I need to be here. I need to be away from here. He just needed to have recentered, not wrapped his purpose in this mission, and moved on.
So you mentioned recentered. Soul jumped in when they were at the campfire, and Dara tells Soul, by the way, I had a very similar thing happen to me today, and I literally told Kayla, I was like, I'm Soul. I need to be more like Indara. There was a lesson for Torben to learn, and Dara was trying to let him figure it out, which, by the way, we only ever figure out lessons by ourselves.
Yeah.
This is why, like, for instance, like, a lot of ancient writings are told in stories. You have to figure it out. Someone the other day was like, why couldn't someone like Jesus just say it straight? Why did it always have to be in these parables? It's because he understood it's about the story. You got to figure it out for yourself. And I think that Soul was seeking to help Torben figure it out because he just felt uncomfortable in this, I guess, environment where Torben was, again, like, depressed. He wanted to yank him out of this depression. And, like, earlier today, I was talking with a friend, and Kayla was there, and we were all just kind of chatting about different life things and just talking about some of the things we're going through. And there was this lesson that my friend was trying to learn, and I wanted so badly to be like, it's about this. And it's just like, no, don't be like Soul.
Yeah.
Be like Indara. Because I know that for me, the lessons that I figured out that have helped me out the most in my life, once I learned the lesson, I'd look back and I would see all of the times that it was told to me, but it didn't matter.
Yep.
I had to learn it myself.
Yeah, you stunt somebody's growth if you take that experience from them.
Exactly. And it's difficult because you get excited. You're like, oh, but I learned this, I want to share. But it just can't be done like that.
So, I mean, I would, Torben probably got to the point that he was at because this happened more times than what we just saw on screen.
Dude, that's a great point.
Like they've been camped out here for,
great point.
Who knows
7
how long.
weeks.
Yeah, 7 weeks.
Yeah.
So this wasn't just one night. Torben was just
Nice,
missing
Cameron.
home.
I like that. To finish up this thread, Soul says he was disturbed, unbalanced. And Indara says, you were disturbed. Do not confuse Torben's emotions for yours. Interesting.
Yep, you guys were two sides of the same coin.
Yep, exactly. Little teensy weensy miscommunication. Mama said everyone must be sacrificed. No, that's not what she said. She said everyone must make sacrifices. That's what she said in episode 3. A child heard it, misunderstood it, said it. Soul and a lot of people online said no. Soul was saving her because she was going to be sacrificed. No, she wasn't. May misunderstood. She spoke wrongly because she's a child. That's what happens.
It's like that telephone game you used to play in youth group.
Exactly what it was. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Mama said everyone must be sacrificed. That ain't what Mama said. At the very end, Indara looks at Soul, says, ask yourself why you made this choice. Here's why I think Soul made this choice. I think the reason why Soul was so drawn to Osha and the reason why he wanted a Padawan so bad, and this is just conjecture, maybe this comes out later, I don't know. I don't necessarily see it painted on the screen. But as I thought about why did Soul make this choice, I think Soul wanted a family. I think that is a lot of his underlying motivation, that he wanted a family. Even in the end, his very last words was to tell Osha, I love you. That's something that Jedi are not allowed to do.
Yeah.
Jedi are not allowed to have family. And I do think that is one of the things about the Jedi. I think that they confuse love and loved ones with attachments. And they can be closely related, but they're not the same.
That makes so much sense because one of the first things he says to Osha when they're meeting and the witches are there and there's all this tension and he hands her his lightsaber.
Yes.
He says, I was taken much younger than you were.
Yes, exactly.
So his brain was already on this idea of like being taken from your family as a child.
Yes, exactly. And then the next episode is whenever Osha says she's a murderer and Soul says she's still your family. He might as well be saying, you said, he's talking about himself. He might as well be saying, I'm still your family. He wanted family. Yeah. That was Soul's motivation, everybody. Yes, he was blinded and thought he was right the whole time. That's a whole nother thing. But ultimately, why did he do it? Because he wanted family. That's the way I read it. Star Wars is about family in a lot of ways. And again, I think that's just one of those tenets the Jedi just get wrong. Because even Luke Skywalker, he had a family. Han was his family. Leia was his family. 3PO and R2, Chewie, all his family. His found family, sure, but family, all the same. And it sucks that Soul wasn't allowed to have that because that's what I think he really wanted. Yeah, and I think that in a similar way, if Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Anakin would have just said, peace, we're out, and gone off and started their own little thing, things probably would have been fine. I wonder about a similar thing with Soul and Osha. Yeah. But anyways, episode 8, it's like poetry. It rhymes. One sister crashed in the first episode and the other crashed in the last. I don't know. Just something.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think. We're getting to the end here. Quick question. 2 things. One, do you think Kel Naka was working with Chimere? It really wasn't obvious, but someone was able to just kill him. So.
Yeah, it had to have been.
There's going to be a Kel Naka
comic. To get that close.
Yeah. Right. That's what I'm thinking.
With no signs of a struggle or a battle at all. Like, obviously someone Kel Naka trusted or was subjected to killed him.
I think that there are still a lot of questions, and I'm cool with it, particularly if we get a season 2. And I think that there's a chance that they can masterfully weave some of these characters, either via flashbacks or some other way, to get some of these answers that we're talking about, or to some of the questions we're talking about, answers to those. I'd be curious. Last question before we wrap up. Do you want a season 2?
Yes.
Me too.
Yep.
I enjoyed it. I think I said this last week. I feel like season 1 walked so season 2 could run.
I hope
it was
so.
a lot to be set up. It was a grand narrative. It was a lot. Say what you want about the Acolyte. It was very ambitious. And we can argue about how well it was executed till we're blue in the face, but guys, we got to agree on that. And you may say it's not Star Wars or it's not this or it's not that. Fair. You're entitled to your opinion, but man, they really swung for the fences. And I feel like if they had a season 2, that the show would be better received and that it would be able to really build. That's just my thoughts. I would love a season 2.
I feel like if we get a season 2, we need longer episodes or we need more episodes, because I think they've set this up really well where they could go back. I'd like to see a little bit of background with Chimere on the next one.
Yes, give us
some of that
Chimere.
Kelnaka, that dynamic.
Yeah.
We got Plagueis to talk about. It was ambitious. Yeah, I think they bit off more than they could chew with the length of these episodes in this season. I think they could have. I think the show would have been more well received had they tacked on maybe another hour or two.
Yeah, well, maybe we would get that with season 2, and maybe that added context can really help shape some things out. Star Wars has a history of doing that, by the way. There's a lot of things that people were kind of iffy on, and once things sort of expanded, it kind of was like, all right, I see what's happening here, and that's cool. Yeah. Last lighthearted thing regarding a season 2, I was talking with a friend. He was like, yeah, I didn't really like the Acolyte. I was like, oh, okay. He goes, but then, very end, Yoda popped up, and now I want a season 2 so I can see Yoda. So I thought that was hilarious. I think you might listen to the show. Shout out Simon if you're listening. I thought it was so funny. He's like, didn't really like the show. You want a season 2? Well, yeah, because I want to see Yoda again. So you just give some. I mean, it's just that is so Star Wars though. Some fans, it's like literally give me 5 seconds of Yoda. You can greenlight a whole season and spend a couple $100 million. I'm all good. Yeah. So I love that. Any more before we wrap up, Cam?
I think I enjoyed talking about this show more than the show itself, I think.
Well, you know what? There's something to be said about that. This idea of like coming over here to the after party, experiencing a community. It just, to me, it just adds to the enjoyment. And yeah, at the very least, and even if it's more fun, great. It's just, it's fun. And like you said, it can add to it. It's great. I can't wait to do it again next week. But for now, we'll slam this ship. We'll be back next week, and I'll tell you what we're going to talk about, everybody. We know. In the same way that we need a season 2 of The Acolyte to really make things pay off, we got a little bit of a recommendation on the YouTube.
Yeah, this
Someone
one made me
asking
excited.
us to talk about another thing that should have got a sequel so that it can fully develop and pay off. We're talking about Solo.
Yes.
And we're talking about it all next week. So, if you haven't watched it in a while, put Solo on. It's random. We don't care. It's what the Force was telling us to do.
Yeah.
We're going to watch Solo. We're talking about it all next week. You should do the same. Feel free to call in if you got thoughts about it. Until then, Tyler out.
Cameron out.
This party's over.